Hey everyone, my name is Lim, and today we're going to find out what is Evil Defenders. Evil Defenders is a tower defense game originally released on mobile and has been released on Steam through the Greenlight program on the 19th of November. The game was both made and published by Crazy Panda. On first glance at their website, you'll see that they primarily develop what I would describe as Facebook fodder. So they make games where you build villages using in-app purchases, and it's that kind of stuff. And the game is free on the Apple Store and on the Android Store, so the question is, to me, why does this game cost $6.99 on Steam? And is it worth your money? So that's what we're going to try and find out through this video. According to the Steam description for this game, it features 90 levels across 15 distinct mission maps, a huge number of upgrades, with 60 towers with distinct abilities and features. There are 5 regions. There are 6 difficulty modes, including a challenge mode for unlimited battle practice, unique landmarks for every location, extensive skill tree to upgrade your defences, 100 in-game achievements, massive gameplay, beautiful graphics, and an immersive original soundtrack. So it all sounds kind of fancy. I'd like to point out that this isn't a review. I won't be giving a score for this game, and I won't tell you whether you should buy it or not. The content that I'll show you in this video is to help you make up your own mind. And if the game does interest you, there'll be a link to the Steam page in the description box below the video, which will take you to it. So at face value, the game seems pretty simple, but below the surface there's a relatively high level of depth to the gameplay here. So the first question you might ask is, why is it called Evil Defenders? The game's twist on the genre is that you aren't the good guys trying to defend your home from the bad guys, but instead you are the bad guys defending your stuff from the good guys. It's an interesting enough concept, and it's interesting enough to pique my interest in a genre that's already heavily saturated, and especially on mobile, where there are thousands of these type of games already. So let's talk about the graphics first. Personally, I'm quite fond of it. I think it has a cartoony aesthetic with some rather nice, simple animations for the combat and for the environment. Whilst the animations aren't anything out of the ordinary, they do the job, and it's worth remembering this was originally a mobile game, so it's designed around phones which don't have much in the way of processing power. So it makes you wonder why the game costs £7 again, when the graphics haven't really had that much of an overhaul in comparison. So onto the gameplay. It is at its core a relatively simple tower defense game. You have 20 health, and every time an enemy makes it past your defences, you lose 1 health. If your health reaches 0, then you fail the level. A cool twist that the game makes on the fail state is the rewind time function that you can see over in the top right of the screen. If you are struggling to deal with enemies, or you make an incorrect choice on a tower that you purchase, you can rewind time and do it again without having to restart the level. It does cost souls though, which you want to be saving towards upgrades and so on, so I thought it should be used sparingly. The towers are upgraded through coins which you get from killing enemies, and if you change your mind you can get some of your money back from destroying the towers. There is a standard variety of towers, including skeleton soldiers that do melee damage and slow enemies down to keep them within range of the ranged towers. There are explosive towers that fire a variety of bombs and do splash damage, but far slower than your standard archery towers. All this stuff is pretty standard for a tower defense game, and other than the specialisations that allow you to deal with certain types of enemies, there aren't anything here that's particularly unique, to be honest. In 2 hours of play, one of the main things that grated on me was the lack of variety in the sound design. The sound effects used for the enemies and tower attacks are both repetitive and dull, and the soundtrack itself is rather bland and is also repetitive. When playing for an extended period of time, this will most likely bug you. The sounds that they use are very generic stock and kind of cheap, to be honest. But again, this was originally a mobile game where you'll find most mobile users probably won't play with sound, so you can understand it being an afterthought. Within each level you can upgrade the towers to improve their stats and specialise them in different ways. Each tower can be upgraded to be able to deal with certain enemies, such as enemies that fly or enemies that use magic. Outside of the levels there are upgrades which can be purchased using the Souls currency, which you can unlock from completing levels and meeting certain requirements. So these upgrades can allow your towers to become stronger, more powerful. You can use them to deal with different types of enemies in certain ways. One of the unique things about this game is the level design. Whilst the basic idea of the level is the same in that you protect your base and enemies attack from different lanes, the game differentiates itself by having in-game hazards. On some levels there are waterfalls you can trigger and will slow enemies down to give you more time to deal with them. On another level there's a plant that poisons the enemies that are nearby so that they take damage over time, and if you can't quite finish them off with your towers or your melee, then the poison will finish them off for you, hopefully before they reach your base. These add another layer of strategy to each level, and as to use your level abilities you have to use your coins, which you could save for upgrading or purchasing towers. So because of this extra cost I found I only really used them in emergencies, but again they were useful. So it adds another layer of depth to the combat. Alongside your towers and level abilities you also have powers. These can be leveled up in the upgrade menu in the same way as the towers can be, with the souls that you collect. The first power that you unlock is a lightning bolt. It's a straightforward attack and it does direct damage to a small area. It can be upgraded further to damage a larger area and also do more damage on impact. So it's a sort of a burst fire attack that can be used to deal with small groups of enemies at once. The second power that you unlock is a time warp ability. You can use it to send enemies back down the path from which they came a little bit so you have more time to damage it. The original damage that you've already done stays on it, so it just gives you a little bit of extra time on particularly tough enemies to finish them off. The third power you unlock is easily the best. The third power allows you to summon a demon, which basically wrecks everything. It does huge amounts of damage and it isn't stuck to a fixed point. It will move around and it will attack any enemy that's nearby. It's incredibly powerful and is really useful for the later waves when things get tougher. The enemy types are pretty varied here. There are flying units that can only be attacked by certain towers, and units that are resistant to certain attacks, meaning that you need to switch up your strategy to deal with them. Some enemies may be resistant to magic and only can be damaged by melee, and vice versa, meaning that the towers that you may have already invested in aren't going to be any good in dealing with your enemies. So you will have to switch up mid-game and potentially use the rewind function, or you might have to destroy a tower and use the coins to hopefully be able to afford to buy a different one that is going to be able to deal with these enemies. And I feel like this is one of the things that makes the game enjoyable, because you have to test out different strategies. You might decide that at the start of a level you want to go with a bunch of melee towers to try and deal with enemies early on and slow them down, but then you might get 5 waves in and all of your enemies are flying, so everything you've already created is useless. I think this added level of variety is fun. It's not particularly unique to the game, to be fair. Games like Kingdom Rush also do this, but it's what keeps you coming back. Once you beat a level you will be awarded up to 3 stars depending on how much damage you have taken. This system is clearly lifted from mobile to offer small rewards for short bursts of play, and in all honesty this is the best way to experience the game in 10, 15, 20 minute bursts. A nice twist is that there are extra difficulty levels that you can unlock once you've beaten the level. You can gain extra stars for each difficulty level that you've beat, and each difficulty level there are new challenges which make the battles feel different. And from what I can tell, it seems like some enemy types are unique to the higher difficulties too. And not only this, if you have this on Steam, your friends who have played the game and beaten the levels, their scores will show up next to the level. so that you have leaderboards to try and beat their scores. As mentioned earlier, the extra difficulty levels add a layer of replayability to the game. Once you have further upgraded your towers, you can attempt earlier levels to improve your star level. Beyond this, there isn't much of a reason to go back and replay the levels. As this is not a review, I won't be giving this game a score. The purpose of this was to show you some of the gameplay and tell you what the game is all about. As a summary, the game is pretty fun tower defence. There are a few interesting features that make it unique, but in my honest opinion, the game isn't worth the asking price on Steam, especially when it's a free download on mobile. In my opinion, this is definitely worth a look, but if you're going to give it a try, I would recommend playing it on mobile where you don't have to pay anything. Anyway, this was an overview for the game Evil Defenders on PC. If you have your own thoughts on the game, let me know in the comments. My name is Liam and I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you guys soon.